Hi, I'm Sara Gonzales. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Mr. Glenn Beck, what was the top story for you today?
Brexit.
Okay.
Lots of choices, but Brexit, I think.
All right, Stu.
I was thinking we should let babies live, and apparently I'm not the only one who thinks that, which is kind of interesting.
It's shocking if you watch
shocking.
mainstream media, actually.
Can't wait to hear the
I don't
poll
even know
results
who
on
you
that.
are
Yeah.
without a hat. Put the hat on.
I'm
It's
46 years old. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. The hat is off for a reason because I have two top stories. I'm not going to reveal the main one yet. The hat will come into that later on. But I want to talk about this potentially delaying or even not doing the State of the Union address as suggested by Nancy Pelosi.
Good old Nance. Got a lot to get into. A lot to get into there. I'm sorry?
She's full of ideas.
She is.
full of something.
She is. All right, before we get into that, I want to thank our sponsor, Riduzone. So I used to always just starve myself because it was the only way that I knew to maintain a healthy weight. Otherwise, I would gain weight because I lost a bunch of weight and I didn't want to gain it back. So Riduzone is the only thing that I have found that really helps with that without any gross side effects and feeling the jitters or anything like that. Chad, I know that you're on keto, so you know the struggles of being on a diet and trying them out. Well, with keto now, keto's not a struggle.
Not too much, no.
Yeah, but the struggle of losing weight and finding your groove and finding what works for you. Might I recommend Riduzone? What do you?
I'm just saying what works for me, ice cream and Cheetos. Yep. I found the diet that works for me. Doesn't work for my body.
For your weight.
Doesn't work for my
And
pants.
sometimes both at the same time, right? Ice cream with Cheetos on
You
top.
have that yet?
It's delicious. It's really good. Yeah.
Might I recommend Riduzone? It's the good molecule in olive oil that helps boost your metabolism and help you feel full so you're not constantly craving things and just eating because it's fun to eat. Works for me. It can work for you. Go to riduzone.com. That's RIDUZONE.com. Get 30% off of a 3-month supply by using promo code THEBLAZE. That's $1.39 a day. That's pennies. You go to Starbucks and spend more than that. So invest in your health. Riduzone.com. Promo code THEBLAZE. Glenn, Brexit.
All right, I'm going to go in two places because you can find all the Brexit news you need elsewhere. I'm going to go two places with Brexit that I think that I find interesting. One, that the United States and the English and the French and Norwegians and everybody else in the Western world are pretty much going through the same thing right now. We're going over with a border wall. What the border wall really is all about is not a damn border wall. It is about our government not listening to the things that we say are important. And that we want a wall because we don't trust them. You know, maybe, in the old days, we would have trusted the government say, you know what, we're going to take care of the border. We're going to get strong on, Border Patrol. And we could trust them to actually send the Border Patrol. The next president comes in, they don't take them out. We don't believe that anymore. So we want a permanent fixture. And that monument really is there, not as a monument to say everybody stay out. That is a monument of we don't trust the people in Washington. That's my opinion. You're seeing this. We're having this debate on how many things the government can do where they lie to us. We're going to repeal Obamacare. No, they had no intention of doing that. We're going to build the border wall. They had no intention of doing that. Maybe the president did, but nobody in GOP did. Brexit. You know what? Let's give it to the people to vote because we can convince them they're a bunch of dumb suckers. The dumb suckers said, you know what? We don't want a part of Brexit. They freaked out. They were not prepared. They never thought that the people would be dumb enough to leave the European Union. They're not interested in leaving the European Union. And the people said they are. The people were against what Theresa May was proposing yesterday. If I were British, I wouldn't have taken it. It wasn't an exit. It was like, we'll give you a couple of crumbs off the table, but nothing really. You're still in the European Union. We'll tell you what to do. No way would I do that. We're dealing with it. England's dealing with it. The French are dealing with it. Germans are dealing with it. Everyone. So that's the first thing. This is the Western world under attack. And it is not under attack by outside forces. It's under attack by arrogant politicians who just think they know better. It's progressivism. The second part of this that I find interesting, and this part is frightening because it plays off of the first one. in a conversation I had with Daniel Hannan today. Now, Hannan is the guy who pretty much, wouldn't you say, he's kind of like the architect of Brexit, okay? He's the guy who really got it done. He said something really frightening in the last, 40 seconds of our interview, and then we had to go. And he said, I said, so what do you think's coming next? And he said, well, I think we're going to have a hard exit, which will be good, and that comes in March. Now, they're talking about delaying it. I think it will be delayed, but we'll see. And he said, the real problem is that there are people not in America, not necessarily in London, but in Brussels. There are people that in Brussels, in the EU, that would rather see the entire continent go down in flames than the EU broken up and England leave and it be successful. What it made me think of is an episode that we did on Monday, where I showed this timeline, and I showed the timeline after World War II, the United Nations, then the fall of the Soviet Union, everything else. I showed you how things were going in, that what they tried to build was a financial world. They weren't building a better tomorrow, a more peaceful tomorrow, for any other reason other than business. The banks were involved. You can be outside of the international community. When George Bush said there's a new world order, he meant it. It was a financial order. And nothing's going to derail that. In fact, when it derailed itself, because it doesn't work, when it derailed itself in 2008, what did they do? They bailed it out. It can't fail. Now, same thing. And I just fear that there are enough people at the highest levels who will not allow the people in Europe to get what they want. And, I think it'd be interesting to watch what happens in Europe before Brexit. If they're going to a hard exit, just watch.
Yeah.
Culturally, politically, economically, everything. If you'll watch what's going on in Europe, typically you'll see what's going to happen in the United States 20 years later. We've seen that over and over again.
Not going to take 20 years.
And these days it's not going to take 20 years because things have sped up to the point of almost the speed of thought. People they're not listening to the people. You're going to see it implode. You're watching an implosion. You're watching this thing fall apart. And we're seeing it right here. I don't think that Barack Obama was kidding when he talked about fundamentally changing America. This was the plan all along. Financially, economically, politically, it's a power.
And let me say this. That's such an interesting point. When he said fundamental transformation, it wasn't Barack Obama. Barack Obama was selected. Barack Obama was found to be the right person to push this agenda. And the reason why I say that is, if you remember, TARP came out. And you remember, Stu, we were standing in the kitchen in New York City, and that bill, literally, we printed it out, was this tall. And it was the first month of the Obama administration. And I said, who did this? Who wrote this? How long have you been working on this?
Stimulus, right? Now, the TARP was in the Bush administration.
Stimulus.
Right.
So stimulus, it was literally this tall. You don't just put that together in 2 months' time. That's something, it's like, for instance, the Patriot Act. Most people think the Patriot Act was written after 9/11. It was written, I think, 2 or 3 years before 9/11. Just waiting for the opportunity.
Yeah. What you said earlier was a great point when you mentioned Obamacare. Obamacare is a perfect example, a microcosm of the whole thing. If Republicans really thought that in 8 years they would have the opportunity to repeal Obamacare, they had 8 years of Obama's administration to come up with a plan, and when the time came, they had nothing. And now they're scrambling. They couldn't put together a plan that made sense. That in and of itself is a telling sign of everything else that they're trying to do, because they have no anticipation of ever giving up that power. They've built this thing, and that's what they expect it to be.
I truly believe that the only solution for Great Britain is if they yell at each other more in Parliament.
I love that.
I think if they just interrupted each other and
Order!
I love
That guy
that
was
clip.
great.
That guy was awesome. Can we play that?
Yeah.
It's like a brawl at
hear
the
it.
pub.
Yeah.
I love it. All right.
Order! Order!
Order. I'd like a little more, please.
What is this?
The eyes to the right, 202. The nose to the left, 432.
I expect to see,
Off with his head.
I expect to see a white wig just fly
nose
through,
to
or
the
a
left,
chair.
432. So the nose have it. The nose have it. Unlock.
How is that a country? I love it.
At least they're not throwing chairs and punching each other,
And
which
what's-
does happen in some countries.
It is so strange that this is the stick up your butt country of England, except when they go to Parliament. All of a sudden, they're just like, it's an alehouse! Order or kick all you bastards out!
And we're the exact opposite. We're just like our guts are hanging out during the day, and then we go to Washington. Remember the guy said you lie to Obama, and they actually like censored him in the House because of it.
Yeah.
It's like
These guys are yelling, you know, you're a bastard. I mean it. Your father and your mother were married.
All right, I want to move on to, you said that Americans do think that babies should live. Is that what you said?
apparently, which kind of surprised me, because I think the media makes you think that this is it's kind of a split issue between pro-life and pro-choice. But then above that, it's actually worse than that, because it's really the real true minds out there are pro-choice. But I really think pro-choice and pro-life don't really tell the story at all. And I think it's important to look at like the different parts of this, because you know, some people believe abortion should be allowed in certain circumstances, and you know, it kind of goes the other way. So yes.
May I ask one thing before, because we talked about this on radio, and before we get to the stats, I want to know, consider yourself pro-life?
Absolutely.
Okay. Consider yourself pro-life? Yeah. I consider myself pro-life. You do too.
Yes.
I want you to define that in a minute.
Okay. So let's start at the bottom here. This is the most restrictive idea on abortion. Should it never be permitted under any circumstances. It's 10% of overall adults, 24% of pro-lifers, and oddly 1% of pro-choicers who believe it should never be allowed, which is, I don't know how that works. Group of people there.
Let me ask you this. Are you never should be permitted under any circumstance?
No.
Are you?
No.
Are you?
I will say...
yeah, you're like me. You want to be.
No, well, the next one is, and I think there's a difference here. So let's do the next one, and then let's answer this. Because the next one is only to save the life of the mother, which is another 10%. So you're up to 20% here. Again, another 22% of pro-life, and again, 1% pro-choice, which is, again, you don't know your categories
me and
very
my
well.
brother, we don't think...
I kind of, and at this point, Glenn, I count these two categories together because of what we talked about earlier on radio, which is really, at this point with medical science, there's no reason to have anyone...
Life of the mother
the life of the mother is not really a category
exist,
anymore. So I think it's 20% are basically saying it should never happen, and I do consider myself in that category. That's not necessarily the typical Republican view. George W.
Rape, incest, you say no.
I do think that that's wrong.
I do too, but I can't bring
but I
myself.
but I can't dictate that to someone who has gone through that.
Right.
Like, I can't
I
say the government
yeah.
should not let that
I don't
person.
think that two wrongs make a right. However, I think that does have to be left up to the individual
Right.
thing
It's
of
like-
the mother. I mean,
it's this horrible thing
Yeah.
because it's murder.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, and I know I'm going to answer for it.
Yeah.
See, I have friends who are products of rape, so I look at them and I say,
Right.
I'm glad you weren't aborted, and I would love to talk a
Right.
person out of that, but I can't dictate that to you.
So I, on the life of a mother, I think it's different, right? You're having a possibility of trading one life for another, and that's a decision to make. I think, though, in a way, and I bring this up gently, as I've kind of worked myself.
Order!
As I've worked myself through this particular issue, if it's a life and you think it's a life, I find it hard to say, well, then we have to let someone choose whether that person should live. And I think it's the same argument that someone who's pro-choice makes, which is, look, they're just taking it at a different line. If your opposition to abortion is because it's a life, I don't think you can limit it there. At least in my opinion, and I know I'm not in the majority there.
I want to agree with you. I do agree with you.
Morally, I agree with you.
Emotionally, I can't inflict my point of view on if my daughter was horribly raped and she came to the house, and I'd say to her, and it would kill me to ask because I'd be afraid of the answer. Honey, what do you want to do? Dad, I want to have an abortion. I would say, honey, Let me give you some examples of people that you know. But that's up to you. I would have to do that. Now, how could I inflict my point of view on other people when I know what's right, but I just don't see myself doing it with my daughter?
And can I clarify, or perhaps make sure that everyone can clarify? I don't think that it should just be left up to them for forever. I think there's a very small window where they should be allowed to do that. It's not just like,
it's not like
go ahead and do that like 5 months later. Right.
You're carrying the child. It's right away.
Yes. Yes.
One thing I think that conservatives have done poorly in the abortion debate have talked about how, like, look, you had a choice to be made before you had sex.
Shouldn't open your legs.
Right. It's a nice Order. And I think you say something like, well, look, just have the baby and give it up for adoption. And I think it minimizes, I think, what a freaking experience that would be like to go through for a woman. It's absolutely, and imagine now elevate that to a rape or incest case where it would be the most horrific experience you can possibly imagine. The only one I can put past it is killing something, right? Like, and we have two, I think, horrible options here. However, the ending a life, to me, has to be elevated above even the really terrible thing that a woman would have to go through. But I understand, again, I'm totally in the minority on that one, but that is how I thought it out.
That's why we also look at people at the end of life. And I don't agree with physician-assisted suicide. I don't, because I think it will be used to thin the herd and all kinds of things. However, I'm not in your situation. And I might get in your situation, and I may say, and I've been in the situation where I'm in so much pain, I can't imagine another day. And I would hope that I would be around enough loving people going, you're going to make it, you're going to make it. But if I have stage 4 cancer, I know I'm going to die, and I am just in excruciating pain, and I can't take it anymore. I hope that I say life is precious, but I might not.
Right, but again, that's someone making a choice about themselves.
I know.
That is a major separation.
But we're just looking at horrible instances.
She's trying to break us on. I'm just going to keep talking. No.
Okay, we're going to take a break.
No,
you go ahead and keep talking. We'll be back in a minute.
This. I do want to see the top statistics there.
Before we get back into the conversation, I want to thank our sponsor, American Financing. And I'm sorry we don't have Jeffy's voiceover to say on this TV show. But Stu, can you just do the
NMLS 182334.
thank you.
www.nmlsconsumerAccess.org.
Thank you, government, for making us have that announcement, and it does nothing for anyone. Anyway, American Financing is the place to go. I believe this is a family-owned and operated business, now national, and they've grown for a reason. And they grew when banks were shrinking, especially local lenders were shrinking. And that's because they do it right, and they don't get people into stupid loans. And they work for you. They listen to you on what you're trying to do with your house and your finances. They'll advise you. It's not like Stu. He was like, basically, I want to take the money and go to Vegas. Is that cool?
Kind of what I asked for.
Yeah.
Well, and
they said no.
No.
They said if you can get somebody to do that, go for it.
They're salaried. They're not commission based. So, they're not looking for what's in it for them. They're looking for what's best for you. You can go to AmericanFinancing.net or call 800-906-2440. I don't want to get back into this, the chart that you had.
I know we got a little bit sidetracked, but if I can see the chart again, the bottom 20% of basically the most restrictive things. Only life to save the mother should never be permitted under any circumstances. Only in cases of rape, incest, and save the life of the mother. That's basically the George W. Bush position, right? I would say that's the prototypical Republican position to allow it in those cases. Another 28%. So look at that. You're already at 48% of the people. And again, 17% of people who consider themselves pro-choice consider themselves there, which is George W. Bush, which is a pretty significant number.
48% of the total population, 42% of pro-choice people.
Yeah. I
don't consider that. That's not pro-choice. Pro-choice is, I'm cool with it all.
Right. That's how I would typically more define it. Now, only if during the first 3 months of pregnancy. If you see that number, another 27% of adults, it's 42% of pro-choice people. Most people who are pro-choice are thinking first 3 months or more restrictive. I'll remind you that Roe versus Wade outlined a first trimester only policy. That is a combination of those four groups of 75% of the population, which is pretty freaking significant. Mm-hmm. Now, remember, Democrats say all the way until birth, and if you go on to the second trimester, you only another 9% there. Only 14% of pro-choice people even see themselves there. Yeah. And finally, at any time, only a quarter of pro-choice people say what the Democratic position is, which is available to a woman at any time during pregnancy. And it's only 15% of adults. This is not a close issue. This debate is essentially fought on the lines of when. For example, the really restrictive abortion bills that are going around states are trying to restrict abortion at 20 weeks, which is basically at second trimester. You're talking about 80% of people who oppose that, anything past 20 weeks. And it's taught to us in the media like it's this big restrictive measure against
6 months,
women's
choice. The child has feelings. At that point, the child can feel pain, can hear, can feel. That's when you're reading to your baby in the womb. They feel every bit of it. That's when you are truly killing.
And since we've gone to killing babies for so long, I'm hoping Chad will bring the room up a little bit with.
I will just say I'm encouraged at the numbers with that, because let's face it, people are choosing statistically over the last few years. The numbers show people are choosing to have their babies, and that includes single mothers, young mothers, things like that. It's still a problem.
But what's incredible is Governor Cuomo is going for a law. He said, I will not sign the state budget unless you make it law that all abortions happen all the way up until birth. So he's only with the 15% of Americans, and he's not being called extreme. Mm-hmm. He's holding back the government spending in New York. Trump's saying, forget the wall. He said you can call it a fence, a wall, whatever. We just have to secure the border, okay? That's not extreme. It's only extreme in Washington, D.C., and extreme in the media centers. Extreme is Cuomo.
That's one of the definitions of extremism.
Do we have one more time for that last poll real quick? If you show it real quick. Last one. Notice the top line, 2% of pro-lifers think it should be available to any woman during any pregnancy at any point.
What?
I love that. Who are these people?
They're misreading the questions.
Maybe.
Okay, me and my cousin.
I know, Chad, you said that you have a big announcement that you are about to reveal. We're going to take a break and keep you guys waiting.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Come back for
Cliffhanger.
Chad's announcement.
I love it.
All right, Chad, I know you said you teased this yesterday. You've got a big announcement, and I think we have a video. Can I just play the video?
I think you should.
Okay, all right, let's just roll the video.
There you go.
Well, you did join the club.
Transformation. You've been twisting my arm. There it is. There it is. You've been saying all along, and you know what? We've been keeping it a secret. We've dropped little crumbs along the way to let them know we were coming. But Humor Me with Chad Prather premieres on Blaze TV on January 30th. We talked about this thing for about a year of trying to figure out how we could do it. So the beauty of this show is, not only are we moving our podcast over here, but we're doing a whole new show. This Humor Me is basically an opportunity for folks to come be a fly on the wall as we're on the road visiting with celebrities, talking about topics each episode, and on the bus, in the airport, going around. And we've got some incredible sketch characters that I do that are pretty silly and a lot of fun. But again, it's thought with humor, and I think people are going to have a great time with it.
You're filming it here too, parts of it, right?
We're going to film some here too, and we've got, like I said, we've got big plans for podcasts, but I'm excited about this show.
We're thrilled to have you.
It's going to be
Welcome.
fun. Thank you for having
excited.
me. Everybody's been so gracious.
You're staying for overtime.
I will.
Right?
Yeah, I have to
okay.
go. Yep.
You have to go. BlazeTV.com. Watch Chad.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you.